Jackson Gray, welcome to the Personal Success Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
For our listeners, tell me who is Jackson Gray? What is his life about for him?
My name's Jackson. I'm 23. I just turned 23. I live in the UK, in a nice little city just in Norfolk. And it's ups and downs for sure. I recently just on my feet from like a very big knockdown, and to say the least, I'm slowly getting back there. It's been a struggle, but I've persevered through it. I'm still going through it, but yeah, just taking it day by day at the moment. I'm not overthinking it. I'm not overcomplicating it. Obviously, every day has its challenges, so you just have to keep persevering through it.
You know, one thing is working with you is from the coach client role and all that. One of the things that really stands out about you is your resilience. Where does that resilience come from?
If I'm honest, I don't have an answer. I am very much one of those people that I kind of just go through it day by day. I feel my emotions quite intensely. I will have my days where I'm very, very lonely, very, very angry. Those negative thoughts thinking like, why am I going through this? Why me? What type of person am I? Am I a bad person? Am I a good person? And it's so many different things in my head and so many different voices from other people where I can never tell what is what and what's real and what's not. And I have so many people look at me and say, you've gone through this journey. You're a fantastic child growing up. You were a fantastic person in this area of your life and this situation and that situation. You've done so many amazing things. And then obviously for the people that know me on a more deeper level, know me to be quite a impulsive, like outrageous person. I tend to do the pushing away a lot, and I can never tell where the determination to keep going comes from. I just have my days where I'll feel my emotions. They'll either be very mellow and I just keep going, and I don't really have a strict answer for it, but I just keep going.
Yeah, I think even just before when we were talking, we were discussing a busy day that you had yesterday where you just kind of said, appointments had to be rescheduled and things moved around. And then, you ended up having to then after all this long day of scheduling and stress and all that stuff, didn't walk home an hour. And it just was like the way you said it was sort of nonchalant, like, it just kind of is. And so it struck me that as we talk, that there isn't this kind of resentment towards, sort of the difficulties in your life. There is kind of like this attitude. It's like, oh, I just have to do it. I just have to do it. So
I'd always be moaning about each struggle I had. I'd be like, oh, why this, why that? I think it just comes with age and time. I think I learned as I grew up not to continue to blame everything and everyone or everything around you. Like it's like we said on a recent group session. Like it's just pointing the finger inwards. You have to just take accountability for it, and you just have to acknowledge it, and you just have to keep going. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about your sort of mission, because you and I met and you're like, I feel compelled to help people in sort of a platform. One of the ways I might do that is through coaching potentially one day, life coaching. So
Yeah.
I wondered, walk me through what your kind of mission is becoming as you're kind of discovering it, because we've talked several times about your want to help others.
Very much someone that I read people quite well. I understand people very well. Obviously, that will come with its challenges and its moments of maybe going too deep with someone and not always understanding it the correct way or approaching it the correct way. It's all a learning curve. It's all a process. But just throughout my life, like I'm someone that I won't allow people to help me. I won't let my guard down to allow people to find the time to try and fix what's wrong with me and what's going on in my life or what situation I'm going through. But I'm very much one of those people that I love to understand other humans. I love to understand why they feel things the way they feel them, what their trigger points are, what their stories are. Because I think as humans, we all have such a strange way of living, and we all choose different paths of life, and we all choose to be different people. I think my experience of understanding how certain people are from where I'm from and around the world, I see a very big difference. And it motivates me to want to dive deeper and understand humans better. And not just humans in general, but like just how the brain itself works. Like I can talk to people very well and I can understand things quite well. And I can read people just by looking at them and I can read their emotional tonality and their body language. And I can tell when they're trying to deny something, that they're lying. And a lot of time it's more of, oh, I'm not lying. I'm fine. I'm fine. But like I can just feel that energy within them, and I can just sense their sadness. And sometimes they'll, push it away, and I know I'm fine, and they'll really shrug it off. And then you've got those people that are willing to open up to you, even if it's just a stranger. That willingness to open up to someone you don't know, it's a very powerful thing because for all I know, I could be a murderer, and that person has still chose me. And a lot of the times, I've listened to some people's stories, and I've thought to myself, like, how do you do it? This is what keeps me going, in a sense. And even if I don't realize that's what keeps me going, it's in the back of my mind because I know that I'm not the only one out there that has those struggles, those like face problems. I look at them and I think, okay, like if they can do it, I can do it. And it's sort of one of those things where I want someone to look at me and say, if he can do it, I can do it. And as you've said, as a lot of people have said, like I've got a story to tell, and it's not one of the most interesting stories, but it's one of those stories that I want people to sort of look at and say, okay, like he wasn't perfect, he made mistakes, but he's still trying to be better every single day. And at least he acknowledges where he's gone wrong. Because I think a lot of people, from the experiences I've had in my 23 years, I've noticed a lot of people will not take that accountability for their own self, and they will choose a different path. They will choose a different way of thinking, and they will use certain ways to disregard and dismiss their own behavior because they don't want to feel that feeling of, well, I'm to blame, I'm a bad person. And through recent discussions we've had, we've discussed certain people in my life that have been having those struggles. And yeah, I just think it's a very powerful thing because self accountability is one of the most important things we can do as people. Because if you just go through your whole life not seeking accountability in yourself and just blaming everyone else in life, where do you go with that? You don't go anywhere because you're just constantly running away from yourself. You're not you're not running anywhere forward. You're just trying to push out everything that points the finger inwards because you don't want to have that courage to say, okay, this is where it went wrong. I can hold myself accountable for this person or this situation or whatever the things. I really want to change the way we think about mental health and how everything in the system is placed, because I can understand how we all have certain ways to process our feelings and we all have different ways of coping, but I feel like there's not enough people out there that want to make a difference. And I've noticed that stigma across multiple platforms, multiple individuals, whether that be in my own life or online, especially with like suicide rates in men. A lot of them, like no one, because they just think like we're men, we're supposed to hold that ground. We're supposed to be the masculine, strong people. And then there's that big stigma of, women and men and who's supposed to hold themselves the strongest. And a lot of people will disagree with that, and a lot of people will agree with that. But I guess it's more about how you look at it from your own perspective.
I hear just a really deep and true fascination with humanity and sort of the subtle nuances with, why we do what we do. And there's kind of like a fine thread that runs through that where I hear you saying that, you see people who have struggles who really inspire you. And you are now one of the things you want to achieve in your journey is to share your story so that people can be inspired by the difficulties that you've had as well. It's interesting that having known your story and a little bit of it, right? I don't want to, and certainly I'm not even prompting you to share your story, but you said you referred to your story as not being interesting. And that's something I think that number one, I would say, at least in my opinion, in your case, that's not true. Because I think your story is very interesting about how you've sort of, you've been very open about that. And I think that there is some inspiration for people who hear that story and can connect with it. Because even like I said, with the small conversation we were having at the beginning of this, I was sort of taken aback by how sort of the difficulties that were thrown at you yesterday, you just sort of handled, right? And then you talked about self, accountability. I think there's a desire there for wanting to not only know yourself, but know the people that are around you, the people that you desire to connect with. So it seems like you have there's at least a very inspired mission in there.
I think it's again holding myself accountable here. The certain people I surround myself with, and always there's that saying, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." And I think that's also a very powerful resonation because a lot of the people you hang around with, you become, and that's not always the case, but a lot of the time that is the case. And through my own personal experience, I have seen people in my life hang around certain people, certain environments, and they've been drawn into that world. They've been drawn into that sort of, and I'm one of those people that, again, holding myself accountable, certain areas of bad environments, and I've had my moments where I've wanted to do things, but when I look back as a now to when I was 18, 19, growing up, even younger, it was never because I wanted to be these people. I just wanted to fit in. And I think that was where I went wrong. And that was where I needed to sort of take a step back, even at my age now, because it's only been the past 6 months where I've really started to do the work. I'm one of those people that would run like issue I had. I would not have that perseverance to go through it. I would just always make excuses. I'd go into bad habits of pushing people away, trying to fill voids, and I just didn't want to take responsibility for my own actions because I wanted everyone to feel sorry for look at me and say, okay, well, he's the victim. Like, let's give him a shoulder to cry on. And it was recently when I went through a really hard breakup that it really taught me to have a moment where I was in a very difficult situation. I'd been at rock bottom and it got worse and worse. And I had no choice but to really just sit there and say, okay, this is where I'm at. If I continue down this path, where is it going to take me? Where will I be? Who will I be? And reflect on my own experiences and where I'd come from, my circumstances. And I just said to myself, like, I don't want to be like these people. I don't want to be in this situation. I don't want to be this person in 10 years. I want something to show for it. And I've always had that mindset like, I want to inspire people. I want to do this. I want to do that. But one thing, like we discussed a few days ago on the group session, is the fear of failure and the fear of judgment. And that's one thing I hold myself with. I'm constantly worrying about the thoughts of other people. If I do this, what will they think? If I do that, what are they going to say? And even at my work, I mean, I'm very new to this job, and it's a very hard job. But obviously, like we've discussed in the first month, they knew coming into this role I was never experienced any way, shape, or form in the sales world. And within my first month review, they would already say, "Okay, Jackson, like we think you're at your depth." And I just sat there. And one thing that really hit me was the fact that I just sat there and I took it on the chin and I didn't argue back. I didn't make an excuse for it. And if this was me a year ago, telling myself, okay, like you're gonna sit there and you're gonna be like really chill about it and you're not gonna say a word and you're just gonna take it on the chin and take it on board and get on with it. I'd have sat there and looked at myself and said, no, you're talking rubbish. And there was a lot of things said in that. And I remember I scored out of my entire performance review. So I think it was 18 out of 60. And that was based off like my overall performances, like an individual, my performance on prospects. Uh, and when I got through to that in my head, I was like, okay, like this is where the self doubt will come in. So what am I doing? I'm out of my depth. Like they're right. And the targets we have to hit is 12, and you have to hit a 12,000 mark or dollar mark or whatever part of the country you're working. And I ended up hitting one prospect from New York. It was an elevator company, and I managed to make over 20 grand in 2 months. And that was just off one prospect where everyone else was making like six prospects, making less money. And I sat with that and I thought to myself, okay, well, I've made one prospect out of 12, but within 2 months period, I've hit £20,000. There is no way in this job they can say this boy is out of his depth, because I've proven I can do it. Whether it's with one prospect and it's with one sheer of luck, I've done it. I've proven myself worthy of the job. And it's not an easy job. You have to learn it and you have to have a certain mindset for it. And that's something I've learned, because I don't always agree with how they structure it, how they do the job. But it's one of those things where I will just say, I'm here to learn. And I remember when they asked me like, how do you feel with the feedback? And I just said, absolutely. As I've said into this job before, I came into this day one knowing that I would not get very far with this in the first few months. This is very, very normal for me. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, well, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with that, because I have to be accountable for what I don't know. And it's all a process. And they were very struck by my mentality of it, because a lot of people from the experiences they've had will just sort of make excuses. And I recently did a one-to-one session with the top earner of this company, and there was one of my colleagues that would work with her, and she didn't sort of take that accountability for her own mistakes, and she thought she knew better. um, and I really resonated with it, and I thought, okay, well, this is where I can actually be different. This is where I can learn. This is where I can show growth within myself. And obviously, I have my challenges. I still stress about it, but the fact that I know I'm capable of just taking that criticism and feedback, it's even better, because um, I think it's important to take feedback. And it's like Alex Hormozy said, like, when you stop getting feedback, that's when it really hits the dust, because once you stop it, you'll never receive it again. Feedback and criticism is the only thing that will make you grow. And depending on your mentality, your will, and how you persevere through that feedback, you either say, okay, well, this is going to knock me down, I give up, or okay, where can I grow from this? What is it teaching me? How can I move forward? How can I grow? What can I learn from this person? So I think it's a very, very challenging process, but I think it really comes down to just your mentality and having that choice to say, okay, I can either say I'm a terrible salesperson, or right now I'm not where I need to be. How can I get to where I need to be? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying is that you're really demonstrating what it means to have a growth mindset. Because I think for a lot of us, feedback sounds like blame or sounds like there's something wrong with us. Or there's something, that's sort of, we're not looking at it as data to make changes. And it sounds like you made a conscious effort to not only put yourself in range of that feedback, but then to put it to good use. And it sounds like, number one, you've been at work, people have said to you, wow, you're not reacting the same way everybody else is to this feedback. And then your performance is also improving too, because you're sort of putting it to good use. So
Very,
I think that's also probably shows your resilience too, because you're not, you said sometimes you'll beat yourself up over it, but also you're putting it to good use. You're not using it as a way to judge yourself and punish yourself, for example.
very challenging thing for me, because, as I say, one of my biggest problems at the moment is I continuously care about everyone else's opinion. And again, holding myself accountable to that, it does stop me wanting to grow, because I sort of shrivel up into a ball and think, oh, well, I don't want this person listening to me, because what if I sound wrong? What if I sound stupid and they're judging me? And I've had so many of my colleagues say, like, realistically, no one cares. Like, no one cares what you do. Like, you may think that no one cares. And it's what society says. And fantastic motivational people like Alex Hormozy or like Jordan Peterson and all these fantastic people and so on, they just say no one cares. Like, you sit there and you believe that everyone cares, but realistically, it doesn't matter what you're going through, what your experience is, what your life story is. No one cares. Like, you just have to do the work. You have to make that conscious choice to do the work. And it's like Alex Hormozy said, people are impressed by people who don't try to impress people. Whereas I was one of those people that would impress people and do all these stupid things because I wanted to fit in. I wanted approval. And it's the same with David Goggins. I watched his podcast with Andrew Huberman yesterday um, while I was at work, and I was just listening to how he would take that accountability, saying, "Oh yeah, I lied about this, I lied about that. I wanted people to like me. I did all these crazy, bizarre things because I wanted that approval." And I really resonated with it because I've been that person and I still continue to some degree be that person. And it's something I'm still trying to get out of. And I think, and with a lot of people, I think we all mask how we truly are as people and how we truly feel because we are afraid of what the world will think. And I think a lot of people will deny that and say, "No, I don't care what people think." And some people genuinely don't care, and some people just will mask it. And I think that's okay. And I think as humans, a lot of people really overcomplicate how we are. And I think you really, realistically, the simple answer is you just have to keep going. You just have to have faith in yourself, and you just have to make that choice to say, okay, I don't like this. I don't like this is what I'm feeling. No one needs to know about it, but this is where I can make the change within myself and grow. And some people never get there, and some people do. And whether you get there or not is down to you. And it's the same with all realms of life. If you're an athlete and you want to be the best, you have to make those sacrifices. You have to sacrifice going out. You have to sacrifice social time, and you have to sacrifice part of your mental health the best, as they say, you have to be a little delusional. And it's a very powerful thing. So I myself want to be a footballer, but as much as I say I never had the right people around me to teach me that discipline and to help me grow in that area of sport, I have to hold myself accountable that I didn't work hard enough myself. And I was also very young and I didn't understand what discipline and what all these different factors of what it I wasn't surrounded by it, I wasn't exposed to it. And I can partly take accountability to myself for hanging around with those wrong people. And I can also say, well, I wasn't in the right environment. I had certainly good people around me, but whenever I tell them that delusional dream of mine, how I was going to be better than Ronaldo or Messi, it was, oh, well, just get a normal job, go into a trade. You're not going to make this dream happen. This is impossible. I would always and say, "Oh, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe it's just a dream." And I would really just watch all these motivational videos. And I started watching motivational videos at 14. We were in assembly and we watched a video called Dear Hard Work. And that really resonated with me. And ever since then, I'd started watching motivational videos and I was continuously trying to persevere through the stresses and the pressures of my own life and school. And I just got to where I needed to be with it, something would always come up and knock me back, and something in me would just make an excuse. And I very much lived that life of giving up and running away from things and avoiding things because of fear of failure. And remember when I went to college, I played football in college for a little bit after I dropped out of school, and I couldn't hack the discipline of it. I couldn't hack it by just listening to criticism all the time. If I made one wrong pass, my coach would say, "Oh, you're shit. Well, that's a terrible pass." And mentally, I just feel horrible. I feel like I'm carrying the weight of my world on my shoulders. And I remember it just made me extremely depressed. And growing up through that and growing up through dropping out of school just because of the fact I had to drop down a year because I moved school later in a year and I couldn't get the exam options I needed because there was no room. And then going through like my first teenage breakup, like all of those silly things were what caused me to drop out of school because I was constantly just running away from it. I was avoiding it because I didn't want to face it. And looking back in life now, I've had that moment of telling my teachers, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be a millionaire by the time I'm 18. I'm gonna come back in a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. I'm gonna show you all where I've come from." And obviously, I don't have a Lamborghini 6, 7 years later, and I'm not rich. The fact that that mentality to dream and just not execute it was where I was like, okay, like this is where my issue is. Like I'm just all talk at the moment. I'm not doing anything. And it's as I say, the past 6 months, it's only been the time I've really started to take action for my life and face accountability and seek guidance from yourself and other people and join a new job that I have no experience in any way, shape, or form. But it's an experience, and I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful that me and you have the work we do together, and that we get to speak to the people we do in the group sessions. Honestly, and hearing their stories really consumes me in very good ways, because I've seen so many people in my life make excuses, and the fact that I get to listen to people in multiple age range take that accountability and say, this is how I feel, this is where I could be, this is what I need, this is where I come from, and still have that perseverance to move forward. And it's one of the most inspiring things I've ever experienced. And it's a truly privilege that there are people out there that will struggle and still, despite their age, despite their problems physically or mentally, that they have that willpower to move forward. And yeah, I just find it very inspiring, and it goes for any realms of life. You can take it on the chin and you can keep going, or you can just choose to give up and let everyone knock you down. And it's the same with my work. Everyone will have their own method of working. Everyone will have their own mentality of how they should do things and their own opinions of how they think the company should structure their work. We'll have a great team here, and they all do the best they can to make prospects. And not all of them get the targets, not all of them make the money, but they still graft, they still work the hardest, and some can hack it, some can't, and it's just a big opportunity, and I'm just grateful for the experience.
Think that really to kind of get to the heart of what you're saying, as I hear you talking about this point where you sort of came to this crossroads in your journey where you could either sort of work on improving yourself and take the feedback and put it to good use, or you could do what people kind of, I think a lot of the world does. And I know I spent a large part of my life even doing this, is just kind of give up, but go through the motions. Just be like, well, this is it. I guess I'm just going to kind of fake it until I make it. And I think a lot of people do that. And what I sort of hear you pointing to is that you even talked about, there are people that I work with that, I don't know, it appears they might be doing this because I think because people really just, you said you have like a skill of just being with it. Like if it's uncomfortable for you, you'll just be with it until you can figure out what to sort of do with it. And I think that's key right there too, because you can't, some people just really avoid things. And that's the way that we deal with stuff. As a matter of fact, some research came out a couple years ago that 90% of people just move towards comfort, right? But 10% of people, I'm sorry, 90% of people move away from pain. So they're basically just out there playing dodge the pain, right? Something good, something bad happens to them and they react in some way. But there's 10% of people. So 1 in 10 people are actually actively going through or actively approaching comfort, right? And so they're actually doing something about it. And that strikes me, again, not having a deep knowledge of this relationship or this research, but I think what I see there is at least allegorically correct in the fact that you've chosen to move forward consciously with intention to change your life, and I think that's important there. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is because I always have trouble answering this question when people ask me. I have a background in psychology. I went to school for a while to become sort of a counselor or whatnot. And I see a therapist and have seen a therapist for years. And I know that you have as well, Jackson. And I know we just sort of started our work together here in the last month or two. But if you could sort of sum up, what is the difference that you've seen between like coaching and therapy, at least in your own words?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I see the difference in dynamics of how yourself work and how counselors here work. And again, I'm not slating any way, shape, or form counseling or therapists in the UK or in any part of the world. I just think everyone has their own a lot of people will follow the rules of how they're supposed to do it and follow a curriculum. If that's correct or not, I don't know. I don't have much knowledge on how they base it, but from my own experience as a child, when I was 7, my mum passed away. She had a lot of addiction issues. She wasn't a very good person. I remember going through the experiences I did when I was very little. I was 2 when I would watch very abusive men beat my mother right in front of me. And obviously, looking back at it as like a growing up through the past years of actually acknowledging it and understanding it and having those visions in my head of it every day, it's like, wow, like it feels like I'm there. Like when you go to a therapist and you discuss these things, they just say, well, how is it you feel today? What happened in your life? Write this down on a piece of paper and separate your mood from good to bad. And I just sit there and I think to myself sometimes, like, how does this help me? I'm sitting down and writing things on a piece of paper, and I'm not saying it doesn't help. And I did recently start journaling, so that does help. But when you're just constantly writing on a piece of paper about how something affects your mood, in my brain and how I perceive it, it's what is this really teaching me? Know how I feel. I know what I want out of this, but it's not helping me. And I remember when they would get, I went to a place called Cannes in the UK, and when it was just after my mum died, so I was around like 7.5, 8. They'd tell me to do all these activities, drawing, art, or play football outside. My foster parents would be there, sort of monitoring me and preserving whatever they had knowledge wise on like my understanding of my mother's passing and my trauma. And again, I was so young. I was visualizing these in my head every single day and having all these rules around me. And it became a point of growing up, going through different people, therapists, counselors. I think I went to one psychologist once, but no one could really figure out anything. They were just saying, yeah, he's fine. He's just a normal kid with anxiety. He's got a few problems here and there, nothing that time won't fix. And then as I went through like my puberty phase, I became very hypochondriac. Like I became very overwhelmed with lumps and bumps. I'd Google things if I felt something weird in my stomach. And I remember I had this one thing in my stomach, 13, 14, and it was like this pain, and it felt like something was burning inside me. And I remember for 6 months I was constantly on the edge, thinking I had like a tumor in my stomach, and I was googling things, and my brain was obsessing over it. And my foster parents said, "You're a hypochondriac," and all I would do every single day for about 60% of that day when I got home, what's this? What's that? Like, am I going to be okay? Am I going to die? Like, what do you know about this? I was obsessing over it. And as I've gotten older, I've not obsessed over my health as much. I've gone through those experiences and I've sort of just grown up with it. And, I've learned to just chill out. Um, but growing up, going to all these different people around me, they would just say, you're fine. This is normal. But when I met you, you actually helped me understand where I was going wrong. You opened my eyes to questions I wouldn't naturally ask myself. And it was just the most simplest things of, what do you need from this relationship? What do you need from this person? How will this affect you? If you get this from this person, what will that be for you? No one in my experience of going to therapy has ever asked me that. They just say, unload all your feelings. Tell us how you feel. Like, this is a safe space. We want you to, other people have experienced different situations with therapy. It has helped, but I think it all believe like comes down to the type of person you're around. You can go to a counselor who has to follow a bunch of rules of how they, like a procedure they have to follow to get to the bottom of what they're trying to help with that person, if that's the right way of saying it. But a lot of people like myself or you, like we want to fully understand people. And I'm not saying that therapists and counselors don't want to understand people, but I think people like ourselves, we use a different approach to it. We don't just, when we just write, we just we become vulnerable, we open up, and we listen. And I think that's what a lot of people in this world don't do. It's just a case of, yeah, you're fine, analyze your mood, you'll be on a wait for years. And you notice that suicide rates went so high because people weren't getting that correct help. And one of those things that I've found over my time on like social media is people will post dark and depressing about whatever they're going through in their life. when someone will reach out to them, their response is, "No, I don't want help. No, I'm fine. Oh, no, it's fine." Retention, because the people that really, really struggle, they won't say a word to anyone. And if you notice in statistics, the more suicidal people, or the more people that have committed suicide, they've all done it from a silent struggle and not approached in any platform to post their struggle, figure out what it is, and so on. They just won't say a word. Next thing you know, they're dead. And I had someone that was in my life very briefly a few years ago. He had a very high potential in a certain sport, and he was 18 and he sadly passed due to suicide. But and the background of what he lived, I felt that emotion of, I don't want this to happen to someone else. Like, so young, so much potential, and it's because he had no one there. And it just hit me to a degree of, okay, like, there needs to be more people that listen to these struggles and do something about it, because no one takes action the way they're supposed to. And it's, as I say, the difference between yourself and people like you who really want to dive deep into someone's brain and really pick apart everything and understand it, and sort of not even get to the bottom of it, but just let them know that they're heard and that they're seen, instead of just going to someone in a room and just saying all these, going on a waiting list for 2 years. And I'm not saying that's necessarily always a bad thing, but I've known anyone from my experience, and that might not be the case in some other areas of the world or in other people's lives. But for my life, especially, that's always been the case. So I think there's a very vast different to what all these other people have taught me. It's the same with my ADHD diagnosis. I've always known I've had ADHD or some form of something in my brain. Like, everyone picked it up when I was very young. Like, my twitches, my hyperactivity, my impulsiveness. They just say, "Oh yeah, we don't think you've got ADHD. Like, we think you're fine." I'd been to so many people, and I look back and I think, you know, it was only recently, like maybe 4 or 5 months ago, that um I'd been diagnosed. And I really had to sit and reflect with that. And I had to say to myself, like, I'm 23 and I've only now just been diagnosed with this. This should have happened 10 years ago. And it was very hard for me to come to terms with it, because I felt so much certain situations, certain people, and how I treated people, or because I was either trying to fill a void, I was trying to protect myself, or just simply not acknowledge anything I wanted to, like, not acknowledge. And I just felt very like monstrous as a person. I didn't want to really accept that I'd really just done all those horrible things because of something that was going on in my brain. And I'm not saying that it's all down to ADHD or a condition that my brain is under, if that's the right way of going about it, but there is a big part to play in it. ADHD does affect your brain in a very, very intensified way. And a lot of people will misunderstand that. And coming from yourself, who also has it, like, you conduct yourself very well, you're very calm, and you know, you understand the dynamics of how it works. You're there to sort of help people sort of understand it and how they can sort of rectify certain things. So yeah, I think there's a very, very big difference in how my experience with you in the past 2 months have helped me grow significantly than what therapy would have 10 years ago. So again, thank you for that. And it's the same with other people that we speak to on the group call. Like, so many of them praise you for your work. And I think what you're doing is really, really good. And it's changed a lot of lives, and it will change hopefully hundreds of millions of more in the future. Because this is like a legacy. Like, you build these types of things, and whether it's a small thing, come across one right person, it could just go all over the world. And you know, you're really growing with that. So it's truly remarkable to be a part of the experience. So I do thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate the acknowledgement there. It's interesting because I think, what I've come to understand is that the helping of other people, like you're feeling called to help people in a at least adjacent way, and is part of the healing journey as well. Like, you can't continue on the journey unless you start creating a community. It's about human connection. You know, that's why solitary confinement is a punishment, right? If you put yourself away from all human interaction, you know, it is not a healthy place to be. And it's interesting as you were sharing some of the you know, the experiences that you and I had, it reminds me of the first time that I had it might not make sense because the context is different, but the first time I had a coaching, I got sort of attracted to coaching differently because there was all the, it was COVID, everything was online. I had to do something with my time, and everybody was like, "Okay, you productivity, let's get productive." And I remember the first call, my you know, it's like my coach was like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" "I want to become more productive." "Okay, what's that going to do for you?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm going to get more done." "Okay, why is that important?" And I just remember being like, okay, this is not going to work. This guy doesn't get it. You're supposed to want to be productive. But what it forces you to do is, I think a lot of us, we don't know at a deep level what it is that we want. And spending time alone, spending time outside of community seems like it would help with that. But actually, being in connection with other people is where we really find what it is that we really want. And just coaching is sort of a way to sort of expedite that process. So I really like that you said that. And I think too, one of the things I've also seen is that when people find themselves fully resourced with time, you have enough, you know, you feel good about your time, you've got space there. When you feel good about, you know, your health, when you feel good about, you know, making a decent living, when you feel good about your future, when you're fully resourced, you want to help other people. That's just I believe that's the natural state of human beings. Now, people have told me I have rose colored glasses and there's arguments, and sure, we can have those arguments. But I think overall, I've really discovered that about humanity. Not to mention that, let me just tell you, I have two young boys who are now two, but they required so much care when they're younger. It gave me hope for humanity. I was like, oh, well, humanity's got to be good to be able to take care of baby because, I mean, now all I'm doing is saving them from themselves. So all these different experiences I've had have really kind of shaped the way that I think about, you know, humanity in general, which is obviously a shared sort of interest that you and I have.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I remember one of your the call the other day. They just waved. It was really cute. But yeah, no, what you say is very true. And you know, we all live different experiences in life, and we have different understandings of it. We all have different opinions of it. You know, neither are perfect people. Like I'm sure we've all done things like, you know, human can sit there and say, oh, I'm the most perfect human being on earth, unless you're crazy and psychopathic and narcissistic. But you know, I spent a very long time telling myself I was a monster and blaming myself for my mother dying, because when my mother did sadly pass, I was only 7, but the last thing I ever said to her was, "I never want to see you again," because even if at the time I didn't understand it, I was terrified of my mother. I mean, she was only I was terrified. Where I was at the time in a place called Suffolk, there was like a bad side to that area, and it would be, you cross a bridge. I was on the I was on the nicer area. I remember every time I crossed that area, something in me would shift. It was like something like a ghost would just come out of me, and I'd get this chill, and I'd become very scared, and I'd be very vulnerable with my emotions. And it's so vivid that I remember it in ways I do, but. I just remember I watched my mum go through all these different things, and it's such a weird thing because herself, she like we just a few weeks ago, she grew up in a very good environment. Her parents, my grandparents were very caring people, worked very hard, gave her everything, and it's like I say, you show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Like my mom went with the wrong people. She was around those bad things at 14, going clubbing, going drinking, and unfortunately, the way her life went. I'm not saying she's necessary for it, and I'm not saying that she deserved to die for it, but it's certainly the case that she's in a better place. Like she can't cause any more pain to anyone else because she had 5 kids, and all of us kids suffered the most of it. And you know, my siblings, you know, I didn't meet till later in my teenage years, and knew they were out there. And my family, I just had so much anger towards everyone. And like you say about humanity and with your humanity and your kids, and there's like hope. Like I lost hope for people a very long time ago, and it's only now that I've really started to sort of feel that feeling of, okay, like maybe there is hope, because I've spent 23 years of my life going through all these different experiences, pushing people away in the most extreme ways by like, if I feel vulnerable about something, if I'm in a relationship, I tend to just say, no, like I don't love you, like go away. I don't want to be with you, and I'll say some really horrible things I don't mean because it's a survival instinct of mine. It's just the way it's all I've ever known. I'm not saying I've never experienced love or care, but in 23 years of my life, I was brought into the world in a very bad environment. I didn't receive the love I needed. Like when I was first born, my mother didn't even hold me, and then my father decided to tell me that like 20 years later, and he would be telling me all these different things, and I just think, why, why was I not cared for? And I'm the only one out of 5 kids that wasn't adopted. And I just sit there and again I think, why was I not adopted? What was
Yeah.
so wrong with me? And anytime I ever tried to voice my opinions and how I felt with my father, my brother, my aunties, my uncles, "Oh, well, you're just a kid, like you don't get it, but you don't realize what we had to do. We don't realize this." It was always about how they had to go through it and how hard it was for them. And it was the simple answer of you just have to live your life and move on. Like get over it. And it's like, how do I get over something when I don't have the answers I need for it? Saying that you don't always get clarity for the experiences you have in life. And it was very recent that I spoke with my brother. Um, and I just felt this stop being angry at everyone. I need to get to the root of this. I need to go backwards. And I had a conversation with him, and he was telling me, like all these different things I was like as a kid. And, you know, he would tell me about my mum. And there was one specific thing he said. He's like, I remember he was like, I came to your mum's house. She was blackout drunk. You were maybe two, maybe three, maybe a little. And he was just saying, when I left, and I came back, I felt guilty, and I just knew I had to come back because something in him felt just, and he had to go see his own mother because he's my half brother. And he came back, and then the thing that really hit me was the fact that he was saying, "You clung to me like your life depended on it. Like you were." And my mum was just like blackout. I just sit there with it, and I thought to myself, like, okay, maybe you're not to blame, and maybe you didn't help me in times where I needed it, but I guess in some areas of my own life, you did your part. You helped in the ways you knew, but in the most recent times when I was homeless, when I really needed my family, they weren't there. And it was one of those things of, okay, well, you're my family, like your job is to help me. And I had a friend of mine say, well, no, it's not their job. They're your family, but they don't have to do anything. They don't owe you anything. It's just a title and it's just DNA and blood. They don't owe you anything. And that sort of at the same time, I really avoided it, and I was very angry at that. I was like, "Well, no, they're my family. They should help me." They let me sleep in a gym for 38 days, knowing where I was, knowing my current situation. And they had some family members had the room, some didn't, and that's fine. But pleading voice in me was just saying like, "I need help. I will sleep on the floor if that helps. I do not care. I need somewhere to stay." And the fact that the excuses were, well, my auntie's partner's boyfriend comes over. We have the kids over. My brother, we don't want someone dossing around on our couch. And I'm just sat there with all that anger, and I'm thinking, like, I'm your brother, I'm your nephew. Like, who the hell do you guys think you are? Like, what's so wrong with me that you can't help me? And me and my dad had many discussions on this. He would say to me, he's like, well, I've raised nearly 7 stepkids. I was 19. He had my brother at 19 as well. I raised all these kids when their parents gave up on them. And he said to me, it's like, that's the difference between us and them. We make those sacrifices. We don't care what their current situation is, how bad of a person they are. If they need help, we help them. And, I have a very complicated relationship with my father. Mistakes he's made in life, he's always done for me. He's paid the price, made the consequence, and I still have a lot of resentment towards him, a lot of anger. But, it's a process. It's something I'm still working through. But when you say about like losing faith and, restoring faith in people, I can very much say, I needed people there that mattered the most, and they weren't there. And the fact that I'm now in that process of learning to forgive that and understand that, these people, they had their reasons, may not have liked it at the time, their reasons, and it may be really bad on their part, but what can I do? Because one thing I learned is that in these experiences, I've ever been strangers that have taken me in, like my my most recent relationship with the person we spoke about recently. The family took me in, didn't know me, barely knew me, just knew that I was dating their daughter, and they chose to take that onto their shoulders,
Yeah.
and they chose to let me into their home, and they didn't have to. And these were remarkable people, and to this day will always have such an impact on my life to how I am now, because they've contributed to that growth in their own way. Whether I'm still in complicated situation, complications just in general life, that they will always contribute to my growth. And I remember I met a good friend of mine at jiu-jitsu. She was very young at the time. She was around 15. I was about 20, 21, and she was just a young girl that didn't fit in. She had no one would speak to her, no one helped her. I knew the weirdness with the age difference, but I chose to take that person under my wing, and I said, "Okay, like, I'm gonna be your friend, like, I'm gonna talk to you, like," and every single day I messaged this poor girl because she had no one, and she came home every day crying, wanting to, like, do whatever, and her mum knew we were in contact, and obviously I'm aware a lot of people will find that weird, like, "Why are you messaging a 15-year-old?" But her mum told me, "You do not realize the impact you had on her life." The moment she started talking to you every single day, like, she was happy, and again, I understand the weirdness with the age, but I'm more or less my little sister and my little sister, sorry. I more or less saw it as taking under my wing, knowing I can help this person and have an impact on their life. If anything, I saw myself in that poor 15-year-old girl. I saw myself clinging on to wanting friends, and it's been one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had, because to this day, she is like my little sister. I'm her big brother. I took him in under my wing at times because she would tell me, like, he didn't really have many friends. He didn't have much going for him at the time. He was sort of lost. I was like, yeah, no, like, I'll meet him. We'll go to the gym together. And he's just a bit older than me. And honestly, she was more than happy to take me in. They've welcomed me into their family as a thing I've really, really appreciated. And it's like they say, family is family, but you don't choose your family, and your friends, you choose your friends, and they become family. So yeah, it's been a very weird feeling knowing that strangers cared more to help me than my own family. But from stuff I've seen and podcasts I've watched, quite a common thing. I started to understand that. I was like, okay, right, this makes sense. Like, it's not necessarily what I want,
Yeah.
but I'm grateful that I've got it, because it shows that I'm not alone, and it shows that people do care. And for me, one of my biggest thing is letting people in. I've spent a very long time not understanding how to correctly love someone without pushing them away. Again, it's just living in survival mode. That's the world a lot of people with trauma live in, and a lot of people will must misunderstand that. Like, you push someone away in the most extreme way, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, well, that doesn't give you an excuse to hurt me." If you really analyze it, where it's coming from, it's not because we want to hurt someone. It's not because we want to cause damage to your life. It's because that's all we've ever known. And for someone like myself, in my relationships with people, I will overthink, I'll worry, and I'll obsess, and I'll become possessive about things. My issue is I'm so self-aware of it, but I don't know how to stop it. My brain is just on a loop all the time, and it's like, you just want to control this person. You want to do this, you want to do that. You're so impulsive. Why do you do these things? I don't want to do them. It's just my way of surviving. I don't want to snap at people, say I don't care about them, I don't love them, and hurt them, because that has a significant effect on people and a very big impact. And a lot of people will misunderstand that because it's coming from a place of trauma. It's coming from a place of survival, and people don't always understand that. They just see it as, oh well, no, it doesn't give you an excuse to treat me like shit. You know, excuse my French, but it's a very common thing, and I think more people need to be mindful of the fact that people like ourselves, we just want love. We just want to be seen and cared for. And as much as I can overcomplicate what I say, how I come across with it, and how I approach it, it's more of a, I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to control anyone. I don't want to be possessive or obsessive. I don't want to come across these things. All I want is to be cared for and to know that I'm seen. I want people to say they love me and they care about me and really mean it and really show up when it's needed, not when it suits them. And I'm aware we all have our own lives and we all have our own situations, but I've noticed for a lot of people in my life, when they have their own stuff, they sort of just go away and deal with it. And I'm not saying that's always a bad thing, but I see it very differently because I'm someone that struggles every single day, not just with ADHD, but my own inner thoughts, everything else that I've got going on, and I still am there somehow showing up for people. And then when I hear people say, "Oh well, I've got this going on, I can't do this right now," I very much find it hard to understand why, because I'm one of those people that can. But I then had to sort of take a step back and really analyze. Well, some people might feel it a lot more intensely than you do. People need that space to just deal with it on their own. So that really changed my understanding of, not always making it about myself and saying, well, if I can do it, you can do it. And it's the same conversation we had on addiction. I was exposed to addiction my entire life. And the podcast that you actually sent me with Andrew Hubman, I think it was Dr. Anna Lembke. I watched it and I sent you that very long message. Honestly, it changed my perspective on everything. The understanding of the dopamine and, how we sort of refer to the addiction as like an itch, and it's like you can't scratch that itch, but it really sort of changed my perspective on everything. And sort of as we've had those conversations, you've seen me say, if all these drug addicts can choose this path, like why can't they get over it? Why can't they find that willpower to get through it? Because I've been exposed to it. If I can be exposed to it and not get hooked on it, why can't they? So it really did help for me to have that moment of reflection and just say, yeah, okay, maybe people really find it harder. And it was like in the podcast, she did say people really do find it hard to kick an addiction. And I very much found that from my mother as well, continuously battling with addiction, continuously struggling, and that drank very severely while pregnant with myself. God knows what damage it did to my brain or my body, but I've had so many people in my life say, "Oh, you're lucky you didn't get alcohol fetal syndrome," and maybe
Yeah.
to a degree I might have it in some form. I don't know, but fact that you have to take that reflection and not always just pin other people's experiences on yourself because you didn't go through it and you don't experience it doesn't mean you should just look at the world as, well, if I can get through it, you can. I guess to a degree you can argue that, but you have to really take a moment to reflect that people do struggle a lot more than others, whether they admit that or not. So you have to just have that constant understanding of, okay, well, I'm not this person. I don't know their life. And I've had a lot of people say, like, you need to sort of just be less judgmental. And, you can preach that you've not been these experiences and you've done this and you've got over that. But you need to have an effect on the world and to help people. You need to not be so judgmental. You need to understand them before they can understand themselves because you're there to help them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I think there's a lot of really great insight in what you shared there. And I thank you for, again, for your openness and vulnerability. And as we sort of draw near the end of our time, I wonder what's something that you thought I was going to ask you and I didn't, or something that you wanted to share that you didn't yet get to.
And you didn't ask. I think you've asked some really powerful things. obviously, again, I'm still very young. I have a lot of people that tell me I'm young, and in no way, shape, or form will sit here and preach that I'm the most perfect human being, because I am only now just 23, getting on my feet. And, I've had the privilege of meeting some very great people, and I've had the disprivilege of meeting some very bad people. And despite where I am in my life right now, I am still, growing. I am still evolving. I still do give in to my temptations, my impulses, and I do have those self reflection. Shouldn't have done that. I'm going to try and stop it. And, I do relapse. I go up and down, and you know, today I was out just before work, and I remember I was walking. I was watching this couple in the street fight, and I think to myself, okay, do I go over and do I approach this? Because I'm normally one of those people that would just approach it because I don't like it. I get very weird with men and how they approach arguments with some women, depending on they are. But it was very violent, and it looked very violent. He was grabbing her, and these were just like people that were like homeless and on the street. And I had to sort of take a step back and say, okay, like my impulse here is I want to go and kill this person. Like this person is gonna like hurt this woman. And I looked back and I thought, this is just this inner side of myself wanting to protect my mother. And I've always seen it like that. And I just left it, and I felt really guilty afterwards, because normally I'd go over there and I'd say like, back off, leave the woman alone, like you don't talk to a woman like that. And it's like I say, I feel like for myself I can become quite hypocritical, because for someone that's gone through the things I've gone through, I am no way, shape, or form the most easiest person to love or deal with. And I do say the wrong things a lot, and I do approach a lot of things the wrong way. But I think the fact that I am still self aware that I make these mistakes and I do have these impulses and I do relapse a lot is the most people say, like, you're so self aware. And a lot of people have always said, and including the people in our group, that I have such a strong sense of wisdom for my age. And I find it really powerful, because I look at my someone as very much like a monstrous person, and like a very bad person, because of the sort of the bad things I've done in my life and the excuses I've made for it. And, you know, I'm not saying like I've murdered anyone, because I haven't, but when I push people away, I approach different situations the wrong way. It's very much I'm doing it in ways that I want someone to hate me, and then I sit back and I reflect that I don't want this person to hate me. Like, why have I done that? And it's the same with my impulses. Like, growth for me is, I watch all of my friends go out on the weekend, and not all of them, but a good majority of them go out, get drunk, get girls, and I just think, why do they do that? Do they enjoy it? Is there something deeper there? To some degree, I know there's a lot more deeper impacts there, which I won't go into for certain people, but I just realized that, like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to go out and go get girls all the time. I don't want to go out drinking all the time. I will happily have a few drinks, but for someone that's was an addiction in their life through other people, I see the effects it's had on not just my family and whatnot, but people I've known. So I just sort of want to be different. I don't want to be like everyone else. And, I do sometimes give in to my impulses, because I want to sort of impress people. I want to make them happier, because a lot of people I know will say, "Oh yeah, come out, like have a good time." And in my brain, I'm just like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, because I'm so scared of disappointing people. And as bad as that sounds, I will do it anyway. And I'm not saying I don't always enjoy it, but everyone in my life will tell you, you just become so boring. You just become on your phone. You just become very unsociable. It's because I don't want to be there. And they know they in no way, shape, or form force me to go out. I make that conscious decision to go out, and I put that on myself. And that's something I'm very self aware of. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I just really need to learn to say no. If I don't want to do something, I just need to say no and not feel bad about it. But I just feel bad about it. And it goes for any realm of life I've been through, with my current situation with a girl, or, past family members. I'm not going to say I'm the best person in the world, but the fact that I know that I'm trying to grow and I'm trying to be better, and I can hold myself accountable things that maybe they can't hold themselves accountable in their own ways, because we've had various discussions on certain people in my life that will expect me to take accountability and not use how I'm feeling as an excuse to blow out the way I do, but then not take accountability in their own hands. And I just find it very powerful, because I am someone that will look at myself so negatively and look at myself so messed up. But I think the realistic answer is, like, I'm just a kid figuring it out. And I think I'm someone that, despite this sort of growth I'm going through and the setbacks I've had at such a young age, like, I was homeless at 18, sofa surfing until I was my age now. And I've managed to get through that in the most difficult periods of my life. I've had moments where I was like, okay, like, I want to end this all. Like, I'm not made out for this. I can't do this. And even though I'm in a better position and I've got an apartment now and I've set myself up and I'm in a better job and a better position, I don't feel like I deserve it, because the way it works here is when you go into like an emergency accommodation, you are guaranteed a house because it's a requirement. And it's a beautiful new build house, home, sorry. It's gorgeous. And I still sit there every single day and think, what did I do to deserve this? Like, this is something I earned. This was something that was given to me because I needed it. And as I say, I am still young, I am still growing, and I am still trying to understand my brain. And knowing now that I've got ADHD, I can start to figure out the roots of where I'm going wrong, and I can really dive into where I'm going with it and how I can really replicate it. But as I say, I'm just a young guy trying to figure it out. Like, I'm not ever going to sit here and say I'm perfect. I have made mistakes and I have hurt people, and I don't want to be someone that will live in regret and go through those experiences and say, well, I could have done this change and made so much more of an impact on the world, but I didn't because I let these things get the better of me. I can sit here and blame myself for all the bad things I've done and hold myself accountable and say, well, you're a terrible person. But then again, I can argue the fact that I can say, Jackson, you've messed up. You've done this. How can you learn from it? How can you grow from it? And
Well, I think
yeah,
that's really the key. And I think, Jackson, you're doing great work. And I really appreciate your insight, your wisdom, and your time on this morning/afternoon for the Personal Success Podcast. So I
well,
wish you the best and I thank you again. Okay.
well, it's been a pleasure.